smart, clever. And then you have that definition for Agile in software development, and it gets already a little complicated here. So there is something to do with iterations, but we see in Kanban there are no iterations. So sometimes definitions of Agile for software development don't really capture it all. It's not really so clearly defined. So if you're using the noun, it's actually agility. But people now talk about Agile as if it would be a noun. But it's good to not forget it's actually not a noun. So I talked about software development is complex. And you will see now Agile came from, it was developed by several people. You will see that here in the Agile Manifesto. They all made their experiences in traditional projects, and they all had experiences of failures and things that, so much waste, so much things that got wasted. At the end you have half of the project you have to rework. So there was a time when many of these people really got together at conferences and worked together, and then we have that Agile Manifesto that they came up, Scrum was developed. So these were all things that came up as a measure against these failure of projects, and another way of seeing it and working with that. So in a way, this Agile way of working is an empirical process. So instead of trying to manage every detail ahead and have a full work plan and assign tasks to people so that you kind of know exactly what do we do at each day the next half a year. Instead of that, it's an empirical process. So you don't have to plan everything in every detail ahead. You have to plan, of course. That's also one of the problems with Agile is people go to a training, they think, good, no documents, no plans, let's just start doing it. Of course, that's not Agile. It's harder to do an Agile project than a normal one. Because in a normal one, I just follow process. What does the process say? Okay, what report do I have to fill in? Okay, I do that. And you all know the reporting, the watermelon reporting technique. Outside green, inside red. that's how it happens on the chart. I've seen that in project. These nice. There was what was it called? Program management office. There were 3 people full time. The only thing they did was designing excellent charts and sheets, combining reports from sub-projects into overview charts, and of course people delayed reporting red because in a traditional process you get punished for that. So you don't do that if you're clever. So in Agile, actually, it's the opposite. Transparency is one of the pillars. Everyone has to see what's going on. So you try to make things transparent. And there is no, you don't get penalized for that. It's actually helpful to see when things don't work, we will fix them. And it's not that because I raised that issue, it's my problem, and I have to fix it. So there is a team that will improve. So it's really about inspection, measuring, inspecting the process, how it works, how do we work in a team, and then adapting. Let's change something, let's try to see if we can get better, where can we improve for the next iteration, and make all of this transparent. That in an Agile project, if it's like co-located, you have things on the wall where you see the burn down charts, you see the stories, we will explain you that later. Every manager, product owner, they can just walk into that room and they can get an overview of what's going on. Where do we stand right now? They don't have to wait for the weekly report, which doesn't tell the truth. So these are really the core of if we work Agile. And what Edla mentioned, the goal is to fail fast. Better find out in 3 weeks or 4 weeks that this is not what is needed than in a year. I like these. These cartoons from Dilbert, they capture it all. I didn't have time. Maybe there's even some more Agile things. How's your project coming along? It's a steaming pile of failure. It's like 15 drunken monkeys with a jigsaw puzzle. You see, that's the internal project team. how's your project coming along? The manager comes. That's the watermelon reporting. So we don't want that in an agile project. But you see already, if management still thinks in the old way, there is a mindset that does not allow agile. Because agile means transparency without penalizing or blaming people. So if management cannot do that, you cannot do agile. So everyone in the organization has to accept that this is another way of working. So in 2001, if you check, there's a webpage, agilemanifesto.org. It's really good to read that over and over again, to not forget, because often you get stuck in that Scrum way of work and you forget actually the higher picture here, the big picture. So the Agile Manifesto, what does it say? We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others to do it. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over process and tools. You might also know always this tool thing that sometimes gets ridiculous. Things don't work and people will tell, yeah, maybe you should use a better tool. So the fool with the tool is still a fool. So tools don't really help if there's an underlying problem. Not really any other equivalent framework process as Scrum. So we will talk about Scrum, but I also would like to give you a quick overview on Kanban. That's often mentioned. How does Kanban differ from Scrum? And there are some agile methods that are useful, like user stories, how to write test criteria, and just two short ones, how to actually prioritize and plan, estimate efforts in an agile project, just that you get a feeling. So of course, like in 4 or 3.5 hours, you get a taste of it. So I also have some resources, links where you can start more. There's a lot on the web. There are certificates out there you can do for all different kinds of agile flavors. So my goal here is that if you leave the tutorial, you can explain what Agile really is. You have a feeling, an idea about it. Also, if you're a tester, you have a feeling, if I would work in an Agile project, how would I fit in, what maybe changes, what stays the same. I guess you know that. I always show that in all my trainings. You have seen that in the last training. I think it visualizes very nicely, so this is in a software project, how the customer explains what they want, so what product they want. And then you see here how the different people in the project team kind of understand and document and work with that. And then what the customer really needed. So then the question is always, why don't they tell us? And in my requirements engineering training, we look more into that. How do you actually get to what the customer really needs? How do you get to that? Before you finish the project, show it to them, and then they tell you, yeah, that's okay, but actually I would also need this, this, and this, and not that. And then you wasted a lot of money. And that's actually the goal of Agile. So Agile or Scrum, as an example, it works better because you know much earlier what you don't want. So it doesn't work better because it's a superior process or like this. It works better, we will see that soon, because you fail fast. That's always what they say, fail fast. So you don't have to wait 1 year to get the product that you don't need or don't want. You get it in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks. And then you can always adjust and change. So at the end of the year, you actually have really what you want. And traditional processes don't support that. So this is the power of Scrum or Agile, is that the main idea is software projects are complex. There are many variables. So to think you can manage that before, plan everything ahead, that's an illusion. It doesn't work. I mean, there are projects, $100 million projects that fail. 1,000-page specification, project plan, everything, planned to the last detail, fail. So, I mean, there's always this report where you see how percentage of failed projects, and you think, gosh, it's 40 years or longer of software engineering, and still the numbers, they improve, but why do we still have so many projects that fail? And one problem is that software development is not factory work. It's not that there are people on machines, it's not building a car. And that's the problem, it's not building a house. Often management who have no idea about software development or business might compare it to these things, but it's not. So there's a term called knowledge workers. So that means it's a creative process. It has to do with communication, learning. You don't know everything ahead. You have to kind of adjust. So it's very different from working in manufacturing cars. And the idea about managing projects, software projects, of course came from manufacturing. And that's the traditional processes. We don't fully work because developing software is not manufacturing. So there are many attempts to kind of capture that as manufacturing, but it just doesn't work. So that's why Agile, the idea of Agile is to actually not see it as the same like manufacturing, but see it as knowledge work, as a creative process that is changing all the time, because it is complex. There are so many variables in a software project that how do you manage that? You can't manage that upfront. And typically what you do is you manage that while you go, by observing, by measuring and adjusting. And this is the core of every Agile project. So by that we help the customer to find out quite quickly what they don't want, what they want. Yeah, and we talked about that. The idea that you can just develop all requirements 100% in all detail, and then you finish that and hand over a nice document that is supposed to be enough for the next stages to understand completely what it means, just doesn't work well. So there were initiatives also earlier than Agile, like the iterative processes, rational unified process, things like that. In some countries, like Germany, Switzerland, they were quite heavily used, so they already brought lots of advantages compared to waterfall. In other parts, I think in the US, they still stayed much longer with waterfall, so that's why Agile was also very successful there in the beginning. Because the step from waterfall to Agile is of course much bigger than from an iterative process to Agile. So we see here requirements engineering, business analysis, and the testing in a waterfall. These are separate stages, completely decoupled in a way from the other stages, just by artifacts that are handed over. Maybe sometimes not even real people you can talk to. In an iterative process, it's already that these are activities that actually run in parallel, and in Agile, then this is really how it works. So it's continuously ongoing analysis, testing, development, and we will see that also. It's not that you have separate teams who do that; it's one team doing it all. So today we look at a little bit also the how do you fit in if you now have the label of a test engineer, a test technician, requirements engineer, business analyst. How would you fit into an Agile project? Because if you are trained as a tester, you can bring a lot of knowledge also into an Agile team, which maybe has not the full training of testing. Often I have seen that also Agile Scrum projects, they often start with because in Scrum it's called the development team, which actually includes also testing and other things. But often then people misunderstand that slightly, and you have like 5 developers in there. They maybe have a little training as testing, they never really did that long. And now they have to do everything. often this doesn't work. So the ideal of having that team who can do everything is still not there yet, or you need to improve first. So being a tester in an agile team, being a business analyst in an agile team can benefit everyone. If you kind of are able to adjust to the agile working. So you have to get away of that traditional way of working and fit into an agile project team. This is just kind of a motivation for requirements engineering testing. I don't know if you have seen that from Böhm here, the cost of error correction. So what it shows you is here in a timeline of a project, and I just labeled it here kind of in the traditional waterfall stages, the relative cost of error correction. So if you find a problem in the early stages in the requirements engineering, that means it's still on paper. So you can validate it with your stakeholders, they tell you no, that's not correct. It takes you an hour or two to correct and you're done. If you find that after the development and the testing, it gets more expensive because then you find a problem, that means you have to analyze it, correct the requirements, develop it, test it again. So then already costs are rising. And if you wait until the end, in the acceptance testing or even worse, the system is in operation and people find problems that they should have found earlier, I mean the costs go up here 50 times, 100 times more. So an afternoon is now all of a sudden 20 days or 50 days. And that's a lot of money. And also if we look at the key reasons, I mean there are different analyses done, so this is one here from 2005. If you look at key reasons for project failure, if you would ask somebody what you think are the key reasons, I mean people would not really think that requirements is such a big portion of it. So what does that mean? Poor requirements definition or poor scope definition here. It actually means that they could not really define in a way what they really wanted. Maybe the users didn't really tell them exactly, or people didn't even realize what they really wanted. Or analysis was done not correctly, there was not enough time to do that. I mean, this is a big chunk of project failing just because there's something with the requirements. And you see here, lack of qualified resources, I mean, that's just 3%. So finding good developers is not a problem. It's actually really, the problem is trying to somehow find out what do we want to build. What's the scope? What is the requirements? What do the users and stakeholders really want and why? And if you look at that, I don't have a statistic for Agile, but if you look at project failure charts for Agile projects, you see that there are less failures, less project failures. If you work in Agile projects. And so this improves by working with Agile because you find out earlier what you want or don't want. And just because I often talk about requirements engineering or requirements engineer, there are different names for the same thing, for the same role. Like in Switzerland, Germany, where I've been working, we call somebody a requirements engineer. It's even a job role, requirements engineer. And requirements engineer has to do with the system requirements. There's the other term, business analyst. In the German-speaking countries or Europe, often the business analyst is somebody who deals with business processes only. The requirements engineer is dealing with the requirement, the system requirements, the business analyst with the business process analysis and improvements. In English-speaking countries, the business analyst is also doing requirements engineering. So this creates always confusion. So when I use the term requirements engineer, I think here maybe in Malaysia you would call it often business analyst. Just that you're aware of it. And there are other terms, I see business engineer, systems analyst, just analyst, systems requirements engineer. They might slightly differ in what they do, and that might also differ from company to company or country to country what it really means. So I try to stick to requirements engineer when I talk about it here. yeah, then after this little overview and motivation, let's have a look at Agile. The interesting thing is if you read Agile in combination with software development, it's written capital A. But actually Agile is not a noun.